BLOCKTV. It's time now for Chain Breakers, where we talk to the top voices in the blockchain and digital assets ecosystem. We're joined now by Bruce Fenton, CEO and founder of Atlantic Financial, Chainstone Labs, and the Satoshi Roundtable Retreats, to discuss the latest news on this auspicious day, the 1st of January 2020. Bruce, firstly, a happy new year to you and welcome back to this decade of what I hope will be great success for the blockchain industry and BLOCKTV as a whole. All right, so Bruce, I know you wanted to have a look at a little look back as the year kicks off at some of the best personalities, projects, and goals that were achieved throughout 2019. So let's kick it off with your person of the year. Bruce, who do you see as the most significant person in the crypto space in 2019?
He's not a popular person, but I'm going to go with Mark Zuckerberg. And he has a lot of detractors, but I think that And Libra has some detractors too, but I think that what Facebook did, and ultimately what he did, being such a high profile person and CEO, I think it brought the conversation to the forefront, and it had a lot of people talking about it and taking this technology seriously. And it had a lot of people asking really good questions like, is this structure good? Is Libra a good idea? Why is this technology important? Why is this company looking at it? These kind of things. And I think that did have an impact in the world, and I think it's important.
And certainly it did seem an important impact, whether we talk about the the pricing of the markets, crypto markets as a whole, or the changing of the conversation, taking it really to that national and governmental scale when it simply hadn't been there before. But the fact that Libra didn't seem to make any meaningful progress in the year 2019 in terms of actually getting the project off the ground, do you think that detracts from some of the achievements of Zuckerberg and other members of the Libra Association?
Yeah, it's not so much that it's an achievement, it's that it's important. And it's not that Libra was a success story, it's that exactly what you said, that I think it brought the conversation into certainly a lot more corporate boardrooms, but also government conversations as well. And I think it might have even had some effect on China. China looks at Facebook and says this is one of the largest, most successful and innovative companies in the world. And it wasn't long after the Libra issues that China came out with a very pro blockchain stance. And again, same kind of thing. I'm not endorsing either the Libra project or the Chinese government's projects, but I think that the more projects like this, the more people will be looking at this technology and comparing it to other things, comparing it to Bitcoin and other technologies to really see, does this have merit? Can you use it? Is it good for money? Is it good for other use cases?
Yeah, certainly, like him or loathe him, Mark Zuckerberg knows how to make a splash and seems set to continue doing so into the next decade. But now turning from people to projects, Bruce, your project of the year, what do you call it?
Project of the year is Bitcoin. It's maybe not a new project, but I think that Bitcoin this year was interesting. And you could say this about almost any year, but I think it really has shown that it is just absolutely the lead project. It's got a lot of serious developers. It's got a lot of serious people. Even when crypto had a hard time a little bit over a year ago with this crash, most of the people in the space were still looking at Bitcoin. All the altcoins, most of the altcoins washed out. Many of them did very, very poorly, but Bitcoin, performed strongly for this year. It's still down from its highs, but if any project survives in this crypto space, I think Bitcoin has a very good chance of being that project.
I mean, it did seem there was a lot of strength in the world of Bitcoin, both at the retail but also the institutional level, with projects like Backed Futures Exchange coming online, among many others, throughout the year of 2019. Do you think that level of innovation is still going to continue in Bitcoin specifically, looking forward into the next year?
Yeah, I hope so. And I'm particularly interested in second layer things being built on Bitcoin, like Liquid and RSK and other projects like that, because if Bitcoin, what RSK can do, for example, helps Bitcoin be able to have smart contract capabilities in a way. And so if you can have Ethereum-like capabilities but using a Bitcoin chain or a Bitcoin side chain, I think a lot of people will flock to that. A lot of institutions and others. So that's to me, Bitcoin's main things that it needs to do is hopefully Lightning Network will be a success and scaling will be solved, and then building on some of these second layer things like having Bitcoin be a chain or a side chain for securities and some of these other use cases. If Bitcoin does that, then I think that will help its main goal, which is to be global money. But I think the more people using it for these other things, the better chance it has for being global money. And it also makes it more useful.
Yeah, certainly. Developing those use cases is always a critical role within the crypto space and for Bitcoin as a whole. Now, we can't be entirely positive here, Bruce. We've got to take a look at some of the negatives to come out of 2019. Certainly wasn't all glory and sunshine. So tell me, Bruce, what do you see as your failure of 2019?
I think there was a few failures. There was a lot of these ICOs and things like that, and that was sort of predictable. At least I predicted it, and a lot of other people predicted it. They just didn't have good economic terms. But that relates to a bigger problem, which a lot of these projects existed in the first place because they were trying to avoid regulation. If securities were legal, a lot of them would have just sold stock and said, "Here's stock. You own part of the company," and they could have had a token for it. And so still a lot of them would have failed, but at least you would have had better economic terms. And so I think that the biggest failure overall was regulation. The United States is where we are. I think there was a lot of failure in the United States, but also globally, a lot of countries look to the United States. And I think it was just a failure of imagination, which these rules don't have imagination. Many of them are written decades ago, long before this technology even existed. So you have a lot of antiquated regulations that are anti-business. And when something very new and interesting comes along like this, it's a real bottleneck. Our entire industry, pretty much every company I know, the CEOs want to do things, but they can't, or they're not sure what they're allowed to do. So you have these, thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs and thousands of innovators wanting to build stuff, but they either are unable to or not sure if they're allowed to in their jurisdiction, and that's a real shame.
Certainly something to watch out for, how those regulations develop, particularly in the United States, but around the world coming into 2020. And important to talk about this, Bruce, because I'll tell you what, I'm done with 2019. I'm sick of it. It's a thing of the past. Let's look forward. And I know you've got some things that you're excited for in 2020 that we can look out for. The past is done. We can think only to the future. So tell me, Bruce, what are you most excited for the year to come?
I think there's going to be a lot more of a blend between traditional financial services, banks, and other brokerages and things like that with the crypto world. I think you'll see crypto companies getting more licenses and adopting more of the kind of traditional practices, and you'll see a lot more of these traditional companies either merging with or adding the services of crypto. We've seen that a little bit already. Bakkt came from a mainstream large organization, New York Stock Exchange, and you have companies like Fidelity offering custody in certain cases, and you have some of these other things. But I think you're going to see more of that, and that's good. If crypto is to succeed and thrive, you're going to want to see it in part of the mainstream financial system. It's not meant to, and this is a misconception a lot of people have, it's not meant to replace everything in the financial system. Banks can still be a good thing. It's central banks, and it's certain parts of the system that Bitcoin and other crypto can replace, certain third parties that you don't need. But many of these things are good. Having good working markets, having underwriters, having people who can raise money, and having equity markets and private equity markets and venture capital. These are good things, and hopefully crypto will work alongside those, and it will help both the old industries and the new industries build together, just like the internet did. You'll have a blend where kind of everybody will be doing this, and it will be part of mainstream.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I've heard the narrative spoken a lot, Bruce, about the idea of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology as a whole becoming a sort of undergirding for much of the financial system, an internal plumbing that the average user might not interact with all that often, but might help to replace some of the aging infrastructure that exists in the current financial systems of developed nations and even in developing nations around the world. Is that a sort of analysis, an analogy that you would say you think is moving forward with the blockchain and cryptocurrency world?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it can be like the way mobile phones were, where it leapfrogged through in places like Africa. the security system is unbelievably antiquated. I came from this business. I started in securities when I was very, very young. I was 14 years old when I got my first job, and I was 19 when I got my first license. And my mom was in the business, so I saw it a long, long time ago, and she saw it many, years before that. But it hasn't changed much, and it hadn't changed much 30 years before that. You still have these very, very surprisingly antiquated systems, yet trillions and trillions of dollars globally are on these systems. So crypto has shown that money can move all around the world very quickly, pretty securely. There's certainly a lot of problems and issues that need to be solved, but I think that the old security system is ripe for disruption. And contrary to popular belief, I don't think there's a lot of obstacles in the way. There's not a lot of companies saying, "Hey, we really want it this way." Most of the companies generating the real revenue, they would love to have it more efficient. They'd love to be able to move things quicker. There's a couple tiny ones who actually profit from the inefficiencies, but most of the industry would welcome this disruption. It's partly a regulatory issue, but I'm optimistic. Not so optimistic that the regulations will change, but I'm optimistic that people will find very innovative solutions that are within the regulations and still compliant with the regulations, but still make things move much more smoothly and efficiency. So I think that's exciting.
Certainly plenty to be excited about as we stand on this springboard that is January 1st, 2020, ready to dive into the year that will be. Bruce, I'm excited to see what of those predictions do come true, what we can change from the years past, and have a look ahead to an exciting future. In the meantime, Bruce Fenton, I want to thank you so much for helping to break down your best of 2019 and look ahead at 2020. And for those at home, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.